know y'all are all excited about all this science happening in this room tonight. So good evening, and welcome to the Great North Innocence Project's 2022 benefit for innocence. My name is Chanda Smith Baker. I am the Chief Impact Officer and Senior Vice President at the Minneapolis Foundation and the host of the podcast, Conversations with Chanda. I'm an advocate for criminal justice reform that centers community and the most impacted by the criminal legal system. And tonight I am thrilled to be your MC. For those that are on our Zoom, we are so thrilled to have you. We welcome our virtual audience here, and to you that are here, we are so glad to have you. Before we begin, just a few housekeeping notes. I'm gonna put my glasses on, how about that? Our program tonight will be just over 1 hour, and afterwards, our host here at the Quincy Hall will bring out our junk science dessert station for your enjoyment. That sounds exciting. I want to recognize a few people that are here with us tonight. Our Minneapolis City Council member, Latricia Vital. Our Minneapolis Commissioner of Public Safety, Dr. Cedric Alexander. I got a smile, and he also happens to be on the board of the National Board of the Innocence Project, so thank you, sir, for your service. Brian O'Hara, thank you for being with us, the mayor's nominee for police chief. And if there are any other public officials who are in the audience tonight, I ask that you stand so we can acknowledge and thank you. I saw some movement. No. Okay. I want to also introduce our auctioneer for the evening, Dan Musklowski. Thank you for being here tonight, sir. Dan will host our Fund a Need later this evening. Dan has also asked me to remind you that your numbers are at your table, and please make sure they match the number that are on your name tag. The Great North Innocence Project, I think that's funny. The Great North Innocence Project works to free the wrongfully convicted. I'm gonna wait and make sure that everybody got what they need for this auction. Because that's an important part of tonight, yes? Okay. So the Great North Innocence Project works to free the wrongfully convicted and prevent future wrongful convictions from occurring in Minnesota, North Dakota, and South Dakota. The Great North Innocence Project's attorney and pro bono volunteers investigate and litigate clients' claims of actual innocence in order to free the wrongfully convicted from prison. Additionally, the Great North Innocence Program works upstream to prevent wrongful convictions through legislative advocacy, to improve the criminal legal system by addressing the root causes of wrongful convictions, including the use of junk, forensic science, and investigations in criminal proceedings. Finally, the Great North Innocence Project conducts public outreach and education to raise awareness about the causes and consequences of wrongful convictions. Tonight, every dollar we raise will contribute to advancing this critical mission, to ensure that every innocent person who is wrongfully incarcerated across Minnesota, North Dakota, and South Dakota is freed and prevent wrongful convictions from occurring in our region in the future. How about that? Now please help me in welcoming the Great North Innocence Project's Executive Director, Sarah Jones.
Good evening. Thank you. Thank you all for being here tonight. I've been telling people it's like when you were a kid and you had a party and you're worried nobody will come. And then I look at this full room, except for some reason table 12. I guess we missed that. I'm not going to take it personally. But anyway, so each year in non-COVID times, and even in COVID times, I guess, we hold the Benefit for Innocence, but I am so glad that after 3 years, we are back together in a room, being able to talk with one another and reconnect. And for those of you watching on live stream who couldn't be here in person, we see you too, and we're so glad that you're with us tonight. So every year we do this so that we can thank all of you who make our work possible. We can recognize our freed and exonerated clients. Sherman, I'm going to say hello now because I didn't get a chance to before, so I'm so glad to see you here. And, of course, we are here to raise money. So please don't be shy with those bid cards when we do the Fund a Need, because it is only with your help that we can do the important work that we do. Standing here tonight, I'm filled with so much gratitude, and I'm also filled with hope. I was really thinking about what I was going to say tonight, and those two words came to mind. You're going to listen right now to a long list of gratitudes. And I'm hopeful because in this era of difficulties and division, our mission is one that brings people from across the spectrum of politics and viewpoints and lived experiences, brings people together to fight one of the most fundamental injustices in our system, which is wrongful convictions. It's only a part, but it's a really important part. So thank you for being here. Thank you for supporting our cause. Over the past year, the Great North Innocence Project has continued to grow and transform, again with the help of the people who fuel us by sharing our messages, giving money, partnering with us in the community, and so forth. So this year, we added 2 new staff members, Deandra Bieneman and Haley Drozdowski-Poxleitner. Where are you? I want you to stand and be recognized. Wave your hands. I'm not sure where they are. I'm kind of blinded by the light. So this dynamic duo joined us in April and in very short form put all of this together and brought everybody here to be with us tonight. And they're doing a fantastic job. Deandra is our new development director and Haley is our new communications and community outreach director. So with their work, we're able to reach more people and thank and acknowledge and support our donors and partner with more community partners. Thanks to your support, they're able to be with us tonight. And marking the end of a 20-year era this spring, the sad news for us was that our longtime legal director, Julie Jonas, who has been the backbone of this organization for 20 years, decided to move on and become a tenure-track professor at the University of St. Thomas School of Law. And while we're sad that Julie is no longer officially on our staff, we know that she's always going to be a part of our staff in an honorary form and come to our potlucks and other things. But we're also really proud to know that she's taking everything that she learned and the experiences that she had at the Great North Innocence Project, and she's going to be imparting her wisdom and sharing all that information with the next generation of lawyers who can work for our cause or otherwise support our cause. So you'll hear more about Julie tonight. We also have been able to maintain our other staff attorneys, Jim Mayer and Andrew Marquardt, who are here with us tonight, and we added a new member of our legal staff, Anna McGinn, who is a Bank of America fellow who's coming to us as a recent graduate from Notre Dame School of Law. And I want the three of them to stand and be recognized as well. I kind of feel like a mother hen because this whole staff, I really could not be more proud of them. They do amazing work, and I just kind of make sure the lights stay on. We've expanded our volunteer program significantly too with the addition of Haley and Deandra, who've put together a more robust volunteer program, and tonight wouldn't be happening without all the support of the volunteers too. So if you can all wave your hands, let's give them a round of applause for. I told you my list of gratitudes was long, but it would not be over without thanking our wonderful board of directors and our advisory committee members. Our board of directors does so much work for this organization and gives us such great advice and direction, and I would like you each to stand and get a round of applause too. And I'm grateful for our community partners, some of whom are here tonight. So we have, for example, Emily Baxter from We Are All Criminals. We have Eric Washington from the King's Men, Eric and Tammy. I'm not going to list you all, but in any case, if you're one of our community partners, just wave your hand, because we couldn't do it without you. And that includes the Conviction Review Unit partnership that we have with the Attorney General's Office, which is guided by an advisory board of amazing people from across the spectrum of our Minnesota communities. And I know Eliza Darris is here, and Nadine Graves, maybe some others. And the director of the CRU, Carrie Sperling, is with us tonight too. So. And I'm very happy to have our Minneapolis VIPs with us tonight too. We all need to work together in order to make our mission come true. Every player in the criminal legal system, from defense attorneys to community organizations to prosecutors to judges, law enforcement, if everybody really does their job right and follows best practices, we can prevent wrongful convictions, and that's what we want to keep doing. So thank you for coming together. We are currently representing 17 clients in legal proceedings in our 3 states, and we have 62 open investigations. We're going to be working on new legislation in North and South Dakota, and our staff attorneys are teaching at 4 law schools in our 3-state region. So we're busy, and we can do it because we have your support. So tonight's theme is the science of justice. The Innocence Project, whose co-founder, Peter Neufeld, is our keynote speaker tonight, was founded on the recognition that nuclear DNA testing could prove innocence for people wrongfully convicted and incarcerated. Science like DNA testing has continued to improve and evolve, and it can play a crucial role in preventing wrongful convictions and freeing the wrongfully convicted. Unfortunately, pseudoscience can also play a devastating role in causing wrongful convictions. So tonight's theme explores both the good science and the not science at all. And I know Peter's going to talk more about this, but and I will leave it to his expertise. But I want you to know that some of these flawed techniques have real impact, including wrongful convictions of at least 2 of our Great North Innocence Project clients. In a moment, you're going to hear the story of one of our clients who was wrongfully convicted based on a flawed diagnosis of what's been known as shaken baby syndrome or abusive head trauma. Robert Kaiser was in prison for over 7 years for something he didn't do based on a flawed diagnosis. His conviction was vacated this past spring thanks to the work of Great North Innocence Project attorney Jim Mayer and a pro bono team from Carlson Caspers and Bassford Remley, and Julie Jonas, our former legal director. We're grateful that you've invested resources in the Great North Innocence Project to make freeing people like Robert possible, but it's a really expensive endeavor that involves a lot of scientific testing, expert investigation and reports, and expert testimony. So without your support, we can't help free people like Robert. And there are a lot more Roberts out there yet to be helped. So sit back and listen, and I hope you will open your pocketbooks and support us. Here is Robert's story.
Prior to this, had I been outside as a normal person and seen me in the paper, I'd have thought he was a monster too. I actually believed in the legal system. And if it hadn't been for this situation, I wouldn't have questioned that.
There have been over 3,200 documented wrongful convictions in the last 3 decades or so. And each and every one of those cases is a story about somebody like Robert. And it's not just the person behind bars, it's their family who is without them. It's their community who is without them. And everyone who's touched by one of these wrongful convictions loses faith in the system.
We brought my son to the hospital, and it was back and forth. At first the doctor said somebody must have done this, and then they said, well, we don't know. For the 7th day of William being in the hospital, they told me I couldn't go back there because they were investigating me. I was actually detained about 4 hours before he passed away that day. I don't know how to really explain it. It's like one of the worst situations you've ever been through. You can't really burst out and yell in court or say anything. So you just sit there in handcuffs while your family are all standing behind you. And then they list off these horrible charges that they've accused you of. And you have to just keep quiet. There was a lot of stuff in trial that was missing that should have been brought to the light of day. It's not like I broke down in tears, but I did when I got back to the cell. The Innocence Project was one of 50-some letters I wrote out to different legal groups across the country.
What really convinced me is when we presented the case to a number of independent medical experts in different fields. We're talking to neuroradiologists, neurologists, pathologists, pediatricians, ophthalmologists, and they're all telling me there's a medical cause for what happened here and it has nothing to do with anyone doing anything to this child. That made me think there's something we can do here.
Years of just people letting you down and your life disappearing. It was nice to have that many people behind you saying, hey, we know you shouldn't be here.
Even when you get compelling evidence that suggests someone was wrongfully convicted, it's very, very difficult to get a conviction overturned. That presumption of innocence that you start with when you're on trial is completely reversed, and now there's a presumption of guilt. In Robert's case, we had a team of 4 incredibly smart and experienced attorneys, not to mention half a dozen medical experts who flew in from around the country to testify on his behalf. That's not something most people have the resources to handle. When we were able to come forward with a number of medical experts all saying the same thing, here's another alternative explanation that is far more plausible, I think that was enough to tip the scales in his favor.
It'd have been just over 7.5 years. Good, good. I wanted to just run as fast as I could from the jail, you know, but I ran right into Jim. I gave him a hug right away. It was a really good feeling. It really was. Since I've been out, actually, the thing that I like the most is not the routine of prison or jail. Just to not have somebody tell you where you need to be at what time and this is what you have to do now. In the first month I got my license, got a job, back to work, pay your own bills, make your own food, do your own laundry. Things I always enjoyed doing beforehand that I get to do again. Feels good, you know?
The thing that speaks to me about the Innocence Project mission has to do with the people we're helping. These are people in a really hopeless, desperate situation. So, I mean, forget fighting against the system. The system is done with them, right? The prison gate has locked behind them. To be able to sometimes give them hope and sometimes actually achieve a result like we were able to achieve for Robert, it makes you realize how meaningful legal work can be. It was only several weeks later that the prosecutor called me again and said, well, we've decided we're going to appeal this decision. It was a bit of a gut punch. Here we go again. On the other hand, we were confident. You know, we're not scared to go through trial again because now we've got the evidence on our side that shows he's not guilty of this crime.
Yeah, so the process just isn't over yet. Hopefully this works out and they just let this go and I can move on with my life. I mean, yeah, I've lost a lot, but you know, there's a lot to look forward to.
An incredible story. You just saw it. May 17th. May 17th. Robert, you were out. I am thrilled that Robert is sitting at my table. Please put your hands together and welcome Robert to our festivities. Side story, Robert said, you see that shirt? Yeah, that shirt was a little bit too big for me. It's not so big now, is it? No, yeah. I tell you what, 17 pending cases, 62 litigation. That's 79 too many humans that are waiting for us to act. And that is why we're here tonight. Tonight, not only the people in this room, but I challenge the people at home also to come together to raise over $75,000, not only to help Robert with his litigation because it's not over yet, he's got to continue to battle, but like I said, the other 79 that we're working on right now. And it takes every single person in here to lift your bid number up. Because not only are we going to raise well over $75,000 in this room, but tonight, as a community, we also have a goal of participation. Tonight, when you find that level, I want you to lift it up and be recognized. Because you are making a difference in our world. A world that needs these type of changes. Tonight, our first level is $10,000. Do I have anybody in this room that would like to start us off at $10,000? If so, lift up your number up nice and high. Do I have anybody that would like to pledge $10,000? As I continue to look, I've got my first one right there. Number 164. That's right, you point to him. We've got our first one at $10,000. Do I have a second in the room at $10,000? Seeing none, we're going to go to the next level, and that is $5,000. Do I have anybody in the room that would like to kick us off at $5,000? I've got my first one, number 485 at $5,000. Number 151 at $5,000. Number 165 at $5,000. And I just got another donation online for $5,000. Let's give all 4 people and $20,000 a huge round of applause. Do I have anybody else at $5,000? Seeing none, we're going to go to that next level. The next level is $2,500. Do I have anybody in the room that would like to pledge $2,500? If so, folks, here comes hands right now. My first one right there, number 257 at $2,500. Do I have a second in the room at $25,000? Wow, I love it when you give me notes. Folks, I got 2 online at $2,500. Let's give those people a big round of applause. Do I have one more in the room at $2,500? Folks, let's give everybody that has donated at this point a big round of applause. We are almost at $40,000. Our next level is $1,000. This is the magic $1,000, as I call it. Who would like to pledge at the $1,000 level? If so, lift your number up nice and high. Anybody at $1,000? I'm going to start over here. Number 160, thank you. Number 256, number 261, number 201, number 199, thank you. Number 501, number 200, thank you, sir. Number 233, number 155, number 329, number 435. Folks, keep on clapping. Number 379. Look at this table. Number 212, 207, 209, 211, and 272, and that brings out another hand, number 334 at $1,000. Do I have anybody else? Let's give all 16 people another $16,000. A big round of applause. Do I have anybody else at $1,000? Because we're going to go to the next level, and that is $500. Who would like to pledge $500? Ma'am, I like how you put that hand nice and high, really fast. All right, let's start over here. Number 195, number 258, number 317. Thank you, sir. Number 430, number 150. Thank you. Ma'am, what was your number? Number 202, number 141. Number 503, and that was just this half. Let's see if this half can beat it. Number 409, number 231, 230, 236, 158, thank you. Number 270, thank you, ma'am. Number 483 in the back, 171, 458. Number 515. I've never seen a number that big. Number 8894. Woo! Number 508. Number 224. I saw another hand over here. Number 178. Number 507. How many do you think that is? Let's give all 25 people a big round of applause. Using my Anoka math, that's another $13,000 right there, folks. 2 levels left. The next level is $250. Who would like to pledge $250? Ma'am, you're the first one with the hand up. Number 294, number 297, number 303, number 455, 300, 298, 301. I think I said 298. Check that one out. 330, I think I said that one. Another 4-digit number. 8891. Number 455. Number 198. Number 429. Number 431. Number 251. Thank you, ma'am. 254. 166. Folks, keep on clapping. That's just this half. Come on. Number 327, number 145, number 144, number 177, thank you, ma'am, 191, 185, number 125, number 415, thanks, ma'am, number 494, number 278, number 509, number 173, 174, 172, 463, 467, 464, 461, number 237, thank you, number 268, number 493, number 486, number 490, number, oh my goodness, go buy a Powerball, number 222. Wow, let's give all 32 people a huge round of applause. Woo! All you know, we have the $100 level. And what's so cool about the $100 level, if you've already given, don't be afraid to do it again, because that's fun, right? Yes. All right, who would like to give at the $100 level? I'm going to start on this side this time. All the way over here, number 521, thank you, at 100. Number 373, 374, 325, number 512, 238, 235, 421, 422, 420, number 496, 453, 274. Let's give this side of the room a big round of applause. Look at this table. We're going to take a picture right there. 441, 442, 444, 443, and 439. Let's give this table a big round of applause. 296, number 136, 428, number 319, 315, number 432, number 248. Boy, I love calling numbers. Number 161, number 167, 117, 119, 112, 1, 2, 3, number 116, number 115, and my favorite number all night, number 8893. Let's give all 42 people another $4,000 at this level. All right, folks at home, there's a lot of different levels. You can definitely click any level, whether it be $100 or $10,000. Your donation will make a difference. On behalf of Flattable Advancement, my name is Dan Maslowski. I'm sending it back to you. Give yourselves one last big round of applause.
All right, wow. I'm having FOMO back over here. I left my thing, so I'm gonna have to give. And I'm imagining, Sarah, that there's still ways for people to give if they were just thinking on it, just stewing a little bit. I think there's still opportunity. They could probably go to the website and click on something. There's a big donate button. I think that we can get to 100% in this room tonight. That's what I think. So what an amazing show of support for this community, for people that need our help. Your investment in this work will ensure that the Great North Innocence Project can continue its work and free others like Robert who are innocent. Now I invite the board co-chair, John Kingsgrave, to offer some gratitude to tonight's sponsors.
Good evening. As Sarah Jones said, it is so nice to be together again. It's been a long 3 years. My name is John Kingry. I'm co-chair of the Great North Innocence Project board along with Kevin Rich. Kevin was only able to stop by for a few minutes this evening because he started a pretty significant trial yesterday. I asked him how it was going. He said, "I'm tired." So keep going, Kevin. I'm grateful to be here with all of you tonight. It's an honor to serve on this board. It's especially an honor to be in this room for those individuals that are here because of the work that has been done by the Innocence Project. I'm just an honor to be here with you. And thank you for your investment in our organization that ensures that the criminal justice legal system is upholding justice and remedying its errors. And I know our board is very excited about expanding our mission into North and South Dakota as well. This work and tonight's event would not be possible without the support from our benefit sponsors. I'd particularly like to call out our Defender-level sponsors who have invested $15,000 or more for the Great North Innocence Project's work and this evening's event. They are the University of Minnesota Law School, Delta Airlines, John and Terry Marquardt, Model PA, John and Cynthia Hart. Thank you. I'm also so grateful for those that are advocate-level sponsors who donated $10,000, including the ADX Foundation, Ron and Lori Ebensteiner, Tim and Andrea Walsh, Gustafson Glick PLLC, and the Tom Family Foundation. Also, I want to give special thanks to the Minneapolis Foundation. So let's thank all of them.
Now it is my honor to introduce our keynote speaker, Peter Neufeld, the co-founder and its special counsel at the Innocence Project, a national nonprofit organization that fights for fair, compassionate, and equitable systems of justice for everyone, frees the innocent, and prevents wrongful convictions. Mr. Neufeld is the founding partner of the New York civil rights law firm of the Neufeld, Scheck, and Brunston LLP. His focus is constitutional law and civil rights. He has lectured and taught students, lawyers, judges, legislators, scientists on subjects of the intersection of science and criminal justice. Before co-founding the Innocence Project, Mr. Neufeld taught trial advocacy at Fordham University Law School. From 2014 to 2017, Mr. Neufeld served as a commissioner member of the National Commission on Forensic Science. Before this, he served on the New York State Commission on Forensic Science. He is a member emeritus of the boards of Montefiore Medical Center at the Albert Einstein School of Medicine, a graduate of the University of Wisconsin. Peter, okay, we can clap. We can clap. I won't say anything about, Green Bay or anything. Peter Neufeld received his law degree from New York University Law School. Please join me in welcoming Peter Neufeld to the stage.
And thank all of you for being here and showing your support for the Great North Innocence Project. It's a thrill to be here, actually. And don't get worried. I was asked to speak about the science of justice and the intersection of science and law. And there's a lot of lawyers here, and we sort of ran away from science in college, which is why we went to law school. But I was able to learn these things because I had real clients. And I had clients whose life and liberty required me to learn these things, and so we do. and all the lawyers in this room do that on a daily basis, and it's really quite extraordinary. I guess if you were going to think of a science that is working for justice, the easy answer would be DNA, which is how the Innocence Project got started 30 years ago. DNA, of course, has the capacity to inculpate people, to identify them, or identify their biology as being at the scene of a crime, which could lead to their conviction. It also has the extraordinary power to exculpate, to require the dismissal of indictments where people were charged inappropriately, and more importantly, to save people's lives and liberty who have been wrongly convicted. DNA is one of those sciences, though, that before it ever found its way inside a courtroom and inside the criminal legal system, had been applied to medicine for many years. It went through rigorous basic research, tens of millions of dollars in applied research. The FDA looked at it, CLIA, other regulatory bodies, and so people could have confidence in the integrity of the results that it created. As mentioned by Sarah, not so necessarily with many of the forensic methods that have been utilized for decades in our criminal legal system. Unlike DNA, a lot of those forensic methods were developed by law enforcement for the purposes of law enforcement. I mean, for instance, shoe print comparison does not have a medical application, okay? And a lot of particularly the impression comparison disciplines don't have any other application other than for law enforcement. So one might think that, well, if you have DNA now, you don't really have to worry about wrongful convictions. Well, the simple truth is that only about 5% of violent crime even lend themselves to DNA testing. If there's a drive-by shooting, there's no DNA deposited by the shooter necessarily on the deceased. And certainly the blood of the victim doesn't end up on the car of the driver. So it's very, very important to look at our DNA cases, which is what we did originally, deconstruct them, and find out what are the most common causes of wrongful conviction. What are the contributing factors? And a lot of them are obvious to all of you, things like eyewitness misidentification, false confessions, police misconduct, lawyers who are asleep in the courtroom, jailhouse informants who are incentivized to give testimony in exchange for a better disposition of their own case. But one of the leading causes when we deconstructed all those cases, 45% of the time, the misapplication of forensic science played a role in that wrongful conviction. And by learning about all those causes, it enabled projects such as the Great North Innocence Project and other projects to roll up their sleeves and do much more challenging work than we did in New York at the beginning. Because these projects are doing work where there is no DNA to exonerate people. But they're able to look at those causes, look at those triggers, reinvestigate the cases, and walk people out of prison. And it's truly heroic work, and we're very grateful to all of you for doing it. Perhaps the place to begin is with a case that we're currently litigating. And I want to bring it up because it's not an old case, it's actually a very recent case, and it will show you how these problems have not faded away. A few years ago, Jocelyn McLean, a young, working, married mother of 2 young children, gave birth prematurely to a third child at the Mississippi State Medical Center. The child was born prematurely, the child had lots of complications, and so for the first 7 days of this newborn's life, the little girl was kept at the hospital and the mother went home. On the 7th day, the hospital discharged the newborn to Jocelyn. Jocelyn immediately noticed that the child was not eating when she tried to nurse, that the little food that she did take in immediately passed through as diarrhea. She was having some difficulty breathing, and She brought the kid home, and after one night, her breathing got much worse. So this 8-day-old newborn was then rushed to the hospital by the mother. She went to the nearest hospital. And for a number of hours, emergency room personnel did everything they could to try and save this newborn's life. All kinds of heroic interventions. They even brought down a special neonatal unit from Memphis, Tennessee, to airlift the kid if the kid could respond. Unfortunately, after a number of hours, this 8-day-old newborn died. Now, under Mississippi law and under the law of most states, when an infant dies, the deceased is sent to the medical examiner's office for autopsy. And so this 8-day-old went to the medical examiner's office, taken there by the coroner of Tallahatchie, Mississippi, and the medical examiner conducted an autopsy. It was, in fact, the deputy ME, and the deputy ME looked at this newborn, ignored the 8 days of medical records, ignored all the emergency room records, and when the pathologist saw 2 red marks on the newborn's neck, which were created by the medical personnel trying to insert IVs the day that they didn't save this kid, the pathologist said, "Wow, that's an indication of attempted strangulation." And when the pathologist saw abrasions on the infant's rear end, which were caused by the diarrhea that I mentioned, the diaper rash, and a number of rectal thermometer insertions during that day when they tried to save this newborn's life, the pathologist ignored that and said, "Wow, this is evidence of a sexual assault." And finally, when the doctor saw the trauma to the head, which was the result of a successful IV insertion by the medical personnel in the ER, the pathologist called that blunt force trauma, the blunt force trauma that caused the 8-day-old newborn's death. And the forensic pathologist said that the manner of death was a homicide. And so the state police of Mississippi investigated the case and went out and talked to Jocelyn McLean and said, "Who was with this newborn during the 24 hours that the newborn was discharged from the hospital before you brought her back to the ER?" And she said, "Only me. My mother was in the next room, but it was just us." And so a grand jury indicted Jocelyn McLean for capital murder in Mississippi just a few years ago. She was remanded without bail, despite the fact that she'd never been arrested in her life, and she had no family court record, and her other 2 young children had always been fine. And she remained in jail for a year until the part-time public defender in Mississippi got hold of another pathologist out west who looked at the report, looked at the medical records, and wrote a summary report saying, "This is all awful. None of this is accurate. None of this is true. That this child died of natural causes. Every single mark on the body is explained in the medical records, and none of this should have happened." Just last year at this time, in October, just 3 days before Jocelyn was supposed to stand trial for capital murder in Mississippi, when the deputy medical examiner saw the report from the defense expert, he wrote an email to the DA saying, "You know what? I'm going to recant what I said originally. I now see that all of the injuries were due to the medical interventions at the hospital the day that she was brought in and dying. I now concede that this child died of natural causes." Later that day, the district attorney dismissed the charges against Ms. McLean, and she was reunited with her children. A few months ago, the Innocence Project filed a civil rights lawsuit, not only against the deputy medical examiner of Mississippi, but also the other chief deputy and the chief medical examiner, because they had reviewed the work of the first deputy and signed off on it as saying it was accurate and correct. So we filed a civil rights lawsuit to hopefully give some compensation to Ms. McLean and get some greater discovery about other abuses by these forensic pathologists. Recently, the defendant pathologist filed a motion to dismiss, asserting that even if everything that we said in the complaint and everything I said to you this evening was true, nevertheless, the lawsuit should be dismissed under the doctrine of qualified immunity, which is a doctrine that police have utilized to defend themselves when sued, even against the most heinous acts of brutality. It's a doctrine that basically says that even if they engaged in this misconduct, and even if it was unconstitutional, unless and until a federal court says that this specific type of conduct is unconstitutional, then these people are entitled to qualified immunity and the suit should be dismissed. We are awaiting a decision from the Northern District of Mississippi. There have now been approximately 110 wrongful convictions that have been vacated across this country where forensic pathologists played a critical role, and the misapplication of medicine and science played a critical role in the underlying wrongful conviction. Sometimes they've been wrong about the cause of death. Quite often they're wrong about the manner of death. And remember, with manner of death, it's something unique to the United States. You can't do it in any of the other countries that were colonies of England, Australia, New Zealand, most of Canada. Even England gave it up, but in the US, doctors are still permitted to testify about the manner of death, which is ultimately a legal conclusion. Was it a homicide, a suicide? Did the person die of an accident, natural causes, or is it undetermined? 110 wrongful convictions where forensic pathology played a critical role in the miscarriage of justice. Disproportionately, those wrongful convictions were against women. And the National Registry of Exonerations has shown, looking at the 3,000 cases referenced by Jim of people who have been exonerated all over this country for one thing or another, that it's 7 times more likely if you are a black man that you will be wrongly convicted than if you were a white man charged with the crime of homicide. And in my gut, okay, I don't believe that had Jocelyn McLean been a white middle-class mother, she would have received this kind of shabby treatment from the medical examiner's office. Let's look at the other side of forensic pathology. You all know about George Floyd's murder. You all know about the trial of Officer Chauvin, and I'm not going to mention that. But what I am going to talk about is the chief witness for Officer Chauvin, who was a forensic pathologist named Dr. David Fowler. And you may recall that Dr. David Fowler did not accept that the cause of death was asphyxiation due to the knee to the neck, another knee to the back, cutting off the flow of oxygen to the brain for a considerable period of time. Instead, Dr. Fowler said, well, perhaps he died because he was abusing drugs. Perhaps he died because he had a pre-existing heart condition. Perhaps he died because there were fumes of carbon monoxide coming out of a tailpipe of a car. And because we don't know what the cause of death was, the manner of death is not homicide. The manner of death is undetermined. That's what he said. Now, fortunately, you all saw, as did billions of people around the world, the videotape. And so that effort at gaslighting the public didn't work. But I assure you, had there not been a videotape, Officer Chauvin would not have been indicted, much less convicted. People all over the country who practice medicine were very concerned about Dr. Fowler's testimony. Before he testified, for 17 years, he had been the chief medical examiner for the state of Maryland. He had presided over autopsies involving deaths in custody for more than 15 years, hundreds, in fact. And so 400 doctors wrote to the Attorney General of Maryland and said, hey, how do we know that Fowler didn't use this same cockamamie reasoning in the cases that he presided over when he was in Maryland? You've got to do some kind of audit, some kind of review. Well, last week, if you saw it in the newspapers, a preliminary blue ribbon review was done, and it was shown that in more than 70% of the cases where people in Maryland died in police custody, where the police were using restraints to control the person, okay? That in more than 70% of those cases, the forensic pathologists in Maryland, and Dr. Fowler in particular, said that the manner of death was undetermined. And when you say that the manner of death is undetermined and not a homicide, you're actually preventing the authorities from looking at perhaps procedures which are excessive, which are too aggressive, that could be changed to prevent the unnecessary loss of life. When you say that the manner of death is undetermined and not a homicide, you're preventing those police officers who are responsible from being held accountable. And I'm not painting a broad brush about police, but certain police have done this kind of thing. We've seen it. We haven't just seen it here in Minneapolis, but we've seen it particularly in large cities across the country. And what we've seen is time and time again, not just in Maryland, that the pathologists say the cause of death is, the manner of death is an accident, the manner of death is undetermined. But what we've also seen, that when they do this, that what they're actually accomplishing is shifting responsibility away from the police to the physiological and psychiatric predispositions of the victim. And we've seen so many cases now where instead of acknowledging that it was a homicide, they say that the cause of death was something called excited delirium. Now, excited delirium is a cause of death that was made up by pathologists, that doesn't have any kind of rigorous scientific foundation like DNA or like other kinds of medical diagnoses that we're much more familiar with. But it is a syndrome that has allowed police to escape any kind of responsibility or accountability when they are unduly aggressive with unarmed civilians in their custody. A study published just a couple of months ago of 166 recent cases which were misattributed to excited delirium, where civilians who were unarmed died in police custody, determined that 56% of those 166 people were either black and brown victims. The syndrome is not recognized by any international medical group. It's not recognized by the American Medical Association. It's not recognized by the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual for Mental Disorders. It has no psychiatric foundation. It has no medical foundation. And this is a matter of great consequence. Just as the false positive of calling it a homicide in a case like Jocelyn McLean, it's equally problematic when there's a false negative and the pathologist should call it a homicide, but they don't. We also have to understand that these pathologists, just like everybody else, just like everybody in this room, just like me, okay, that we all suffer from different cognitive biases, that we all suffer from implicit racial bias, and implicit racial bias is something we're not even aware of. We're not saying that I'm a racist, we're simply saying that we all have these cognitive biases because of the way we were raised. Public health recognizes this, right? That there's been a disparity of health care in this country where people, particularly people of color, received inferior quality health as opposed to white people. But the forensic pathology community has denied that they could ever have any kind of cognitive biases, despite the fact that so many of them were trained that they are part of a three-legged stool, with the other two legs of the police and the prosecution. They said that despite the fact that very often the only person who's not a doctor or a medical legal personnel in the autopsy room is the homicide detective. And there was a study that was published earlier this year, which demonstrated that in medical legal death investigations, that all you have to do is change the race of the child and change the race of the caregiver, and you will get a different result. And so what they did is they gave everybody the same medical records, and it was much more likely that the doctors would call it a homicide if the infant who died was black and the person who brought them to the hospital was the boyfriend of the mother, as opposed to situations where the infant was white and it was a close relative who brought the child to the hospital. Now, this whole issue of problems in pathology are not new. We've known for years that there were many forensic disciplines, like I mentioned earlier, which were developed by law enforcement for law enforcement without the kind of rigorous quality control and quality assurance that we expect. One great example, which can illustrate the problems of our criminal legal system are bite marks. Now, forensic dentists for years did a very good thing by being able to identify the remains of the deceased in mass disasters, the plane crashes, the train derails. Because you had a closed universe of people, you knew the names of the people, you could get their dental records, and you could simply compare dental records and look at the fillings and the crowns and know who was who. But the dentists weren't satisfied with that. They wanted to be detectives. And so they said, we can look at an impression on skin, and you see a poster board outside which explains this discipline. And we can tell you whether it's a human bite mark, and because we believe that human bite marks are unique, and that even on something as elastic as skin, can be identified in its unique pattern and matched to a human being. Well, there was no science to support those conclusions. There were no experiments, there were no published peer-reviewed studies. It was just something that these people developed so they could testify about it in court. The problem is that in the first few cases in this country that used bite mark comparisons by dentists had hearings. But after that, state after state after state didn't even hold admissibility hearings, didn't even require experts to come to court. They simply said, well, California's already decided it. New Mexico's already decided it, so we'll go along with it. And that's one of the fundamental differences between science and the way the law works. In science, you're constantly testing new hypotheses. The scientific community realizes that life and what we know about life constantly evolves. Law, or at least up until this last year or so, is based on precedent, And this whole notion that it's important to follow the precedent of earlier cases. Those two ways of thinking are not harmonious. And so there can be changes in the science, and it takes the law a lot longer to catch up. In the case of bite marks, we've now had 35 cases around the country involving more than 20 different forensic dentists, where the original conviction was based on bite marks and they were subsequently either exonerated by DNA or they were indicted based on bite marks and ultimately cleared before trial by DNA. 35. But despite all that data and the absence of any scientific research and litigation very aggressively by innocence organizations around the country, not one state has overruled their earlier decisions and decided that bite marks are not scientifically rigorous enough to be admitted in a court of law. How can this be, okay? Well, I told you earlier that the main difference is between clinical medicine, clinical science, and forensic medicine. Forensic science is a completely different approach. That in medical science, right, we have the FDA, we have regulatory bodies, we have so much money spent by pharmaceutical companies and others. Now, I agree it's not perfect, but at least you have that kind of control. I know that when my kid is sick and I want to give her a test to see if she has strep throat, I can have confidence in the reliability of that test. I don't have to litigate it each time because it went through that kind of regulatory control. But in the criminal system, there is no regulatory control. The only control is what's called the crucible of the courtroom. So a prosecutor can rely on any forensic pathology conclusion that they want, or any forensic discipline that gives them the answers that they want, and proffer it in a court of law. The lawyers who are arguing the case are not necessarily scientifically literate. The judge who decides it is not scientifically literate. And certainly the 12 jurors who have to decide how much weight should be given to that evidence don't necessarily have that kind of scientific literacy. So why is it this disparity between clinical medicine, clinical science, and then forensic medicine and forensic science? It's really quite simple. It's all about constituencies. For clinical medicine, we're all the constituency. We all care about our health. And we all want the entities that are out there to make sure that things are done in a good way are on top of it, are controlling it. We are the constituency. In the forensic arena, who's the constituents? People who are charged with crime? People who are convicted of crime? That's why you have that disparity. Fortunately, in the last 10 or 15 years, with the development of DNA testing and organizations like Great North Innocence Project showing how people are wrongly convicted, there was more attention brought to these forensic disciplines. DNA did do that. It was a wonderful camera to identify and expose those problems. Let's hope that with the prevalence of cell phones, like you had here in Minneapolis, and the body cameras that police officers are now wearing all over the country, we may have a similar transformation when it comes to forensic pathology. It'll become more difficult for people to simply say, oh, it was excited delirium, or oh, the person had ingested some drugs that we found in toxicology. This all can come to pass, and I'm very hopeful. I know that all of you in this room would like to see a criminal legal system that is more empirical, that relies on a robust science, rather than simply the tools that had been used by law enforcement without any kind of scientific foundation. We know that you all favor a system that is more scientific, that is more accurate, as Chanda said, one that is more equitable, one that is less biased. Ultimately, what I think all of us in this room want is a system that is not based on fear and retribution. And I think if all of you work together, we can change that fear into optimism, and we can transform retribution to compassion and empathy. And that's an effort worth making. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Mr. Neufeld. I was sitting over here thinking, I thought I understood the importance of tonight before I got here, but I think I understand it more now after listening to that. That it's one thing to support and make sure that no one innocent goes to jail and to prison, but the idea of the person who committed the crime being out there to commit another crime against you and me is something completely different. And we have an opportunity to donate, to contribute, to make sure that we are doing our very best in this community and across this country to stop the wrongful conviction, to improve the science, and to do our part in a just and equitable criminal legal system. So once again, if you have not made your gift and you feel so compelled to give yet another $100 or more, and that means you too online, we would welcome that. We would love it, so please consider doing so. You can use your phone to donate directly to your One Cause account, or you can stop by the registration gift desk to give. Let's see, so next, I will invite Michael Hansen to present our first award of the evening. Michael is a former, come on Michael, y'all can clap for Michael. How are you? Good. I gotta say a few words about him. He got up here real fast. I don't know how he did that. I've been trying to manage these stairs all night. So Michael is a former Great North Innocence Project client who was exonerated after spending nearly 8 years in prison for a crime he did not commit. His innocence was also proven through extensive medical expert consultation and the testimony on his behalf. Today, Mike is a licensed tattoo artist who owns Kinship Collective Tattoo in Northfield, Minnesota, where he has taught up-and-coming tattoo apprentices, and he is a loving father, so welcome.
Good evening, everyone. Tonight I'm thrilled to honor my friend and my former attorney, Julie Jonas, with the inaugural Jonas Justice Award. From this year on, this award will be given to an individual who has advanced the cause of justice through a career dedicated to freeing the wrongfully convicted, advancing criminal legal reform, and educating the public and criminal legal professionals about the causes and remedies of wrongful convictions. Julie Jonas, for whom this award is named, I apologize if I mess this up in any way, because there's no way I can do this justice when introducing Julie, talking about Julie, or anything, because she's done so much. So please bear with me. Julie Jonas, for whom this award is named, served nearly 20 years at Great North Innocence Project as the legal director. Prior to that, she worked as a public defender. During her time at Great North Innocence Project, Julie has helped to free 7 innocent men from prison, including me, led the passage of critical legislation that prevents miscarriages of justice from happening again, taught numerous law courses, and developed deep, lasting relationships with clients, their families, and Great North Innocence Project supporters. She still keeps in touch with many of her clients to this day. For nearly 2 decades, Julie was the heart and soul of this organization, and we're lucky she will continue to consult with the Great North Innocence Project's legal team on a pro bono basis. As she takes the next step in her career as a tenure track professor at the University of St. Thomas School of Law, she will educate the next generation of lawyers, judges, and legal scholars to ensure the criminal legal system upholds justice and fairness. Congratulations, Julie, for this honor. There's no one who deserves it more than you. As Julie comes up, everyone, I invite anyone who has been freed because of Julie, I invite anyone who's been freed of Julie's work to please stand and wave. That's all right.
That's my note.
I will first say that reports of my death have been exaggerated because most people don't get an award like this until they've died. So this is just incredible. Come here. This is incredible for me to be here with Michael and to see Sherman and Terry in the room. It's been amazing to get to work with all of you. And I had to make a note thinking about what Peter was saying. Mike went to prison because of faulty testimony from a medical examiner. And we still have other clients in prison who are there because of faulty testimony from a medical examiner. Terry, who's here tonight, again, faulty testimony from a medical examiner. This is such an important issue. I promised I would be very brief. So I want to say thank you, Mike and Terry and Sherman, for being here. You are the reason that we were all here. Really. I also really, and Robert too, who is not fully exonerated, but I know you will be. I know it's coming for you. I know we're going to win this battle. I know it. I'm so excited, and John Kingery told me the lights were really bright, and they are. So I really want to thank the staff at the Innocence Project. I couldn't have left if you were not all there. I couldn't have left without Sarah and Deandra and Haley, and most importantly, the legal team who are doing such amazing work, Andrew and Jim and Anna. This is amazing, and this is all about you guys, and that's why I could go pursue another dream. And then finally, yeah. It's a great staff. It is a great staff. And then finally, I have to thank our board and all of our other supporters in this room. You are the people that made it possible for me to do this incredibly fulfilling work that's been so meaningful to me for almost 20 years. Not quite, but almost. Please continue to support this organization. It's doing amazing work. It's doing amazing work. So thank you so, so much.
Congratulations, Julie, on your well-deserved honor. Next, I will invite Robert Kaiser up, who you met in the client video earlier tonight, to the stage to present our final award of the evening.
Oh, those lights are bright. So I promised Haley I wasn't going to swear, so I want to read off the paperwork. So good evening, everybody. The Pro Bono Champions of the award, Year Award. Oh, wait. All right. The Pro Bono Champions of the Year Award is awarded annually to an individual or a team of pro bono volunteers who have contributed extensive time, expertise, resources, and passion towards investigating and litigating innocence cases in partnership with the Great North Innocence Project. So I'm honored to present this year's Pro Bono Champion of the Year Award to my own pro bono team of attorneys who fought alongside me and the Great North Innocence Project attorney Jim Mayer. To prove my innocence, without their tireless work, I would not be here on the stage tonight, and that's honest to God truth. Please join me in honoring Megan, Kristen, Chris Christner, Samuel Lochner, Alexandra Olson, and Alexandria Olson of Carlson Casper Law Firm, and Mark Bradford of Brasford Remley Law Firm. And please come visit me on the stage, because I am lonely. Where are they? I didn't swear at all. Made it up the stairs just fine, huh? Yeah. I made it.
So I drew the short straw, and I'm going to be giving very short remarks on behalf of the team. And I think I may be the only thing standing between you and dessert, so it will be quick. First, we all wanted to give a huge thank you to the Great North Innocence Project, and very specifically to Julie Jonas and Jim Mayer for introducing us to Robert and providing us with the opportunity and support to work on his case. Representing Robert has truly been the most rewarding professional experience, and we are all grateful for the opportunity to have worked with him and for him. Zealously representing Robert was easy once we learned the facts of his case and understood the injustice of his conviction. Upon meeting him, wanting to fight for him was even easier. As you can probably tell, Robert is a truly positive and inspiring individual, and he never fails to bring a smile to your face, even after all he's been through. The team would especially like to thank Jim Mayer, who was our fearless leader, also referred to by some on the team as James, others by Jimothy, but he knows who he is, who did the most incredible job leading our team on Robert's case, and we cannot thank him enough for his incredible work and advocacy. Honestly, he did all the hard work, and we just got to show up in court, and like this would not have been possible without Jim. And we'd also like to thank our respective firms, Carlson Caspers and Bassford Rumley, without whom this would not have been possible. We'd like to thank them both for their financial support, as well as for supporting our team members as we devoted time and resources to Robert's case. And that is truly a really generous contribution. And lastly, we'd just like to thank friends, family, the board, everyone here today for supporting the important work of the Innocence Project in representing individuals who are wrongfully convicted of crimes they did not commit. There's a critical need for this representation and advocacy, and that work simply would not be possible without your support. So we thank you so much and hope that all the great work can continue. Thank you.
Congratulations to all of tonight's honorees, and thank you again for all of tonight's supporters, sponsors, vendors, and volunteers for making this year's Benefit for Innocence a grand success. So now, Sarah Jones has one final announcement before we conclude the program for this evening.
Okay, everybody knows that I can kind of go on, but I will try to be brief, because the important news is that in support of our wonderful and amazing clients and the people on our staff who do this work, you all have donated $88,500. Which exceeds our goal, so thank you very much. And because I am who I am and I am the way I am, I'm gonna say, why don't we make it 100,000? You know, we're only, what? I'm not a math person, but what? $11,500 short of that goal? So why don't we raise the bar, and you can go on your phone, or those of you in the virtual audience, you can go online and and just add a little bit so that we get there, because why not? I think it'd be great. And you all are great. So thank you so much for coming. And I will also mention that there is still wine to be had at the Wine Lab if you want to take your chances in winning. We have some really great wine that's worth a lot for those of you who love wine. So give it a try and enjoy the Junk Science Dessert Bar. Thank you all for coming.
I think we can get to 100,000. And so thank you everyone for a good evening. I'm honored to have been the MC. Everyone go have wine and dessert. Thank you for coming out. Have a wonderful rest of the evening.